How we doing, guys? Welcome back to the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. Here once again with my guy Idris Salam, episode 2 of our NFL Preview Divisional Series. Today we're going to be highlighting the AFC South, a division that actually had the number 1 seed last year in the AFC, but last year's playoffs saw a lot of teams die early that were top-seeded teams. Not the typical thing that happens, but honestly, once in a decade, you see that happen. And we're going to start from the bottom and move it on the way up. Former coach Urban Meyer is gone. That is a good thing for them. Doug Peterson, a guy that me and Idris don't care for very much, but we'll admit is a good coach, has taken over. Sophomore, Trevor Lawrence, NFL sophomore, coming off of kind of like a mixed bag in his rookie year. Travis Etienne, I know I probably pronounced that wrong. I always mess up. Etienne. Travis Etienne will finally grace an NFL field this year. He was injured in last year's preseason. We also have a few veteran players that are hoping to contribute. Former New York Giant, number 88, Evan Ingram. Not this 88. I'm rocking the Hakeem Nicks. He will be there. I do believe with the pressure off, he actually could have a much better year out there. Marvin Jones, another veteran. And Laviska Shenault, who I would love to see blow up. I think the kid has a lot of potential. James Robinson as well. That is the offensive side of the ball. We'll get over to the defense in a moment. Idris, what do you see for this team? Do you think there's only, I guess the only place they could go is up. 2 years removed from 1-15. Pretty bad last year. What do you think about these guys?
I think they'll do better. Doug Peterson's a good quarterback coach. And I think he'll fix a lot of the mechanics that Trevor Lawrence needed to work on under Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is not that type of coach who is going to make a quarterback great. He runs that college offense, and Lawrence never learned anything. That thing was dysfunctional from the start. From day one. You know, when they hired him, I was like, "Are you serious? You're going to hire him and bring him to nurture a new, a rookie quarterback who played kind of a pro set offense at Clemson, but people forget that he threw a lot of interceptions. He wasn't real smart with the ball at times. Threw a lot of touchdowns. Etienne is a two-way back. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball, and they know each other well because they played with each other at Clemson. So that'll be easier for Lawrence to get around. James Robinson, big addition. I think they'll do better, but they're in a tough division, man. They're in a real tough division. They can only do better. I see them. I see them winning 6 games. They might sneak and grab a 7th game here and there, but I still see them finishing 4th. Wait a minute. They could get 3rd. But we'll get on that next team in a minute. But I see them making major improvements. I see them doing really much better than they did last year. Because even towards the end of the year, they looked like they had some bite in them. Like, yes, Urban Meyer's gone. They looked like they can come together and say, "Hey, we can do this."
The Buffalo game kind of scraped to that. The Buffalo game. It was an ugly game that they won, but it was a hard-fought game. The other side of the football that I do want to touch on, obviously the defense, a player that I myself wanted a couple of drafts ago. I don't know how you felt about him, but the other Josh Allen, the defensive Josh Allen.
He's good.
Yes, yes, he is. Number 1 overall pick, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia. Our good friend Q is a big Georgia Bulldogs fan. This pick surprised me, and I think the kid is super talented. But I really thought Aiden Hutchinson was going to go first.
I did too. He's a little green.
Yeah, no disrespect to the kid, but I actually believe that it's going to be Hutch, Thibodeau, and then him in terms of how quick they catch on. Now, you can't really project and be Nostradamus and go 10, 12 years down the road and say how they're all going to pan out.
Right.
But this Jacksonville team has talent. I don't want people to think that their failures over the last 2 seasons is based on a lack of talent. I don't necessarily believe that to be true. I think it's a lack of professionalism and a lack of preparation because, Urban Meyer, when he brought in the Tim Tebow circus last year, it was an insult to a lot of NFL players. And listen, I got nothing against Tim Tebow. I think he's a good dude. But the truth of the matter is, let me see. He won that playoff game with Denver basically a decade ago. And then he kicked around as a backup immediately after that and soon was out of the league within, I believe, 3 or 4 years. Yep. So I think it's pretty ridiculous that this many years removed, and when he was actually in the Mets minor league system, because the guy is a great athlete. I won't take that away. But how are you going to bring him in and try to sell to the remainder of your roster, 50-some-odd people, that he is one of your best that can make a team? You're taking a shit on other guys that have aspired to be tight ends their entire career. It's kind of a joke, and it was a joke. It was a publicity stunt. The only thing that surprised me was that Tebow didn't make the team, and the reason I was surprised is because I thought that they wanted to keep him around for 2 reasons. Number one, in the state of Florida, he's an icon.
Right.
I thought, they're figuring jersey sales are going to go through the roof with him. And I also believed that in a way they wanted to take some of the attention away from Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
By having such a popular player. I mean, Tim Tebow is the classic example of college players who were icons in college that didn't quite pan out in the NFL. Reggie Bush had an okay career, but compared to what he was in college, it's not the same thing.
Not the same.
A grand exception would be Charles Woodson because he was that dude in both the collegiate and the professional level. And I don't want to veer too far off on the college talk, but the point to be made here, Doug Peterson, who left unceremoniously in Philly after pissing off you, myself, and thousands of Giant fans for laying down in a divisional game last year, he also lost his locker room over pulling that stunt. Because as much as I despise the Philadelphia Eagles, they wanted to win that game. And not for us. They wanted to win it for them. And it's wrong. It was wrong on the national stage to pull that. The NFL was not pleased. And there were other factors at play too. Doug Peterson has always done things his way, and that way wasn't going to fly with upper management in Philadelphia. One of the few times that I actually praised Philadelphia for what they did. Coming in next, we've got the Houston Texans. Oh, I apologize. Quickly. I got the Jaguars winning only 5 games next year, but I do believe those 5 will be good enough for 3rd place. Coming in next, we have the Houston Texans. Another team in transition. Bill O'Brien really burned the house down, so to speak. Yankees just won, by the way. Domingo Germán picking up the dub. Just got to cross-talk it a little. The Houston Texans, in a matter of a couple of seasons, they lost Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer J.J. Watt, probably future Hall of Famer DeAndre Hopkins, if people could look past the PED suspension, and potential future Hall of Famer, if he gets his legal shit right, Deshaun Watson. And just to veer on Watson for a moment, he's no longer a member of the Texans, but it does appear that he's going to get at minimum 6 games, in my opinion. I do believe that he will be accepting of that penalty, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, and he will play this year. On to the Texans. Dameon Pierce out of Florida. I think he has a lot of potential to be a quality running back in this league. Marlon Mack, coming off of a severe injury, but has an opportunity to stay in his division and reclaim his spot as a starting running back. Don't view Davis Mills so much as a starter, but I think he's a Band-Aid until they figure out what they're doing in a very rich quarterback class next year. Defensively, they got a little bit of good and a little bit of bad. I expect Brandon Cooks on offense to get traded at some point, end up with a contender. He's a good football player, and he plays on a very bad team. But what Bill O'Brien did was deplorable, the way he just ripped this franchise apart. It was horrible. It was horrible.
Yeah.
It really was. And they were pretty friggin' good for a few years. And I think if they would have stayed together, could have potentially won a Super Bowl or two, but they managed to ruin that. What are your thoughts here? Do you think there's anything that stands out where they could potentially surprise a few people? Or do you think this is basement and this is laying down and trying to get a top-tier, top-5 pick?
You know, they also lost Jadeveon Clowney. He may not have lived up to the hype he was coming out of college.
Right about that. Yeah, you're right about that.
But, you know, he did something. And, O'Brien tore that team apart. I'm not sold on the quarterback at all. No. I'm not sold on him.
He's not horrible, but he's not great.
Yeah, he's not great. And in that division, you got to be good. And I don't mean good as in – I think he needs to be good where, okay, we can trust this guy. You know, he may not be great, but we can trust this guy to get us a few good games, good wins.
I mean, shit.
I don't see much of an improvement from last year. You see what?
Neither do I. And you're talking about good, not great. I mean, shit. I remember when Matt Schaub was there for a little while, and even he gave them a little more credibility. I personally think that they are going to tank out in a big way.
Yeah.
But I do believe that there will be a few Sundays next year where they knock off a team that when you look at coming into the week, they're not supposed to let alone be on the field with, let alone win the game. They had a couple of highs last year. They almost beat the Patriots before the Patriots started getting hot and becoming a playoff team. That was actually one of the Patriots' character-defining moments that's turned their season around. They were down in Houston. They came back. They do have good fans, and it's hard for a fan base to root for somebody else in that state that's not the Dallas Cowboys. It is similar to what New York Jet fans go through, sharing a stadium for many years. The previous stadium that's, you pick up a Jet sweater or some shit back in the day, and it would say Giant Stadium on the back. Yeah. Now, we all know that promotions are promotions and sponsorships are sponsorships. But part of the reason for the MetLife versus Giant Stadium 2 is for the sheer fact that I think they wanted to be a little more inclusive with the New York Jets. Point to be made is they share a stadium with they share a state with the NFL version of the New York Yankees in a lot of ways. The Dallas Cowboys, as much as we both don't like them, do carry that aura around.
Right.
And absolute. In that state, they absolutely are. And the Cowboys have a great lineage since 1960 coming into the NFL. They do. It is what it is. But I'm going to go a fourth-place finish for the Houston Texans. And I'm going to say 3-14, and I'm predicting it ahead of time that they will be battling the Seattle Seahawks for the number 1 pick in next year's draft.
I'm going to go 4 wins, 4-13. I think Seattle's going to be well, we're going to talk about them another time. I'm going 4 wins with them, maybe 5. I'm seeing 4. I just – and with this stuff with Deshaun Watson, he's gone, but that stuff carries over. And I just don't see anything in them to say, okay, these guys are going to look respectable. I think they're tanking too. I think they're tanking. They're going to make it look good, but they're tanking.
There might be a weird win that might actually piss off their fan base at the end of the year. Because at the end of the day, players don't go into games saying, you know what, man, we're not playing today. But suddenly an injury that can be played through becomes an injury that you can't play with.
Right.
And there are certain avenues that teams have done. I mean, shit, back when Hugh Jackson was the Cleveland Browns coach, he accused the organization of asking him to tank, and then they gave him the business and threw him on the street, so to speak. So tanking is a real thing, and we want to see competition. But quite frankly, this team just isn't good. But one thing I do want to say about both Houston and Jacksonville and this division on the whole, when people think about physical divisions, they think about the NFC East, they think about the NFC West, they think about the AFC North, particularly that stand out in physicality. But one thing I do want to say, this AFC South is a very physical division where running the ball is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing this team does have going for them, and why I do believe they might be able to pull off the occasional upset, I like their running backs. I think Marlon Mack, even though he's on a very bad team, is going to have a very good year. I think he's a fantasy sleeper, and I think this kid Pierce out of the University of Florida, I believe – oh, yeah, he can move. I'll be honest, in a lot of mock drafts, I drafted this kid in a lot of mock drafts.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a good football player, but he's not going to get the touches in year one. It's Marlon Mack's backfield for at least year one.
Yeah.
Now we're going to start talking about some teams that are a lot more competitive. At the end of the day, I view this as a two-team race.
Yeah.
The Indianapolis Colts, our buddy Wags, his squad. I mean, great offensive line. I wouldn't call them a great defense, but a very scrappy defense. They replaced signal callers. Bye-bye Carson Wentz. Hello, former league MVP Matt Ryan. And they low-key have a pretty good receiving corps.
Yeah.
And I didn't even mention the most important person on the team, running back Jonathan Taylor, coming off a phenomenal year, one for the ages in terms of football history of people who love just the running back position. It's great to see a running back that can still be that 25 carry guy. You don't see it very often. Him and King Henry, the team that we're going to talk about next, are the only two that really consistently can really bring it like that. Dalvin Cook is kind of in the middle, but he tends to get hurt a little more than these two. What are your thoughts on this, man? I'll be honest. I'm going to give you my prediction in a moment, but I think these guys are going to go a lot further than people are giving them credit for.
I like Indy. I got them winning the division. I like Indy. Good offensive line. You got Night Train, Jonathan Taylor, and they got a quarterback who has a brain and is not going to get rattled. And I think that's going to make a big difference on offense because you figure they had Carson Wentz last year, who's a head case.
Yeah.
Soft in the skull. He to where you got Matt Ryan, who's been there. He's been to the Super Bowl. He's been to the playoffs.
Should have won it.
He's been through the down.
Should have won it.
Yeah. So he should have won it. And he knows what it's like. And now he got this guy behind him. And that's going to help Jonathan Taylor because you got a quarterback that says, okay, he sees the whole field. And now you got to think, the defense has to think more now. Like, okay, we got this guy back here, MVP. He's been in the league 15, 16, 17 years. He knows what the hell he's doing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
he knows what time it is.
So, and he got a good receiving core.
Yeah. T.Y. Hilton is like under the radar, primed for a bounce back year because of the fact that their other receiving options have surpassed him on the depth chart. T.Y. Hilton can low-key have a good year, God willing, if that neck holds up. I myself suffered an injury to the neck, and I know how that can alter things playing a contact sport. Yeah. One thing that neither one of us mentioned, but I do want to make mention of now, is in the event that Matt Ryan should get injured, it's an interesting situation that you got going on because, as I already alluded to, you have a former league MVP, and then the backup is a former Super Bowl MVP. You have Nick Foles. It's similar in a way. It vaguely and eerily reminds me of Hostetler and Sims to a level because Sims had won a Super Bowl MVP. Now, I'm not going to insinuate that Hostetler was ever on the level of winning a league MVP, but the point to be made is he was able to do something in that particular season to get him to the top. Nick Foles obviously, changed the fortunes for the Philadelphia Eagles, breaking their curse going back to pre-merger days. because prior to the 2017 season when they defeated the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, the last time they won it all, you got to go all the way back to Chuck Bednarik sitting on Jimmy Taylor. That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. We weren't even here yet.
No, sir. Beating the late, great Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers right before the Packers won on for NFL dominance that kind of blended in between pre-merger and the original 2 Super Bowls. But the point to be made is Nick Foles is a great guy to have on as a backup. Frank Reich, this is his offense. He tried the experiment of bringing in Wentz. It didn't work out. He tried the Philadelphia ties. But to your point, Matt Ryan is not soft in the skull. Great competitor, even going back to his Boston College days. The kid is smart. He's a veteran now. Point to be made is I really agree with you here that these Indianapolis Colts are not just a division winner. I think they are low-key a contender to win that conference.
I agree.
Oh, yeah, dude. I'm predicting 12-5, a strong 12-5 for these Colts. And let me see. I'm going to give them the 2 seed.
That's my pick. 12-5, 2 seed. Yep.
12-5, 2 seed.
That's my pick.
And one thing going back to last year. Go ahead.
The one thing about it, Foles knows Frank Reich's system. Because that's the system he used in Philly. He knows Reich. So, I mean, I see Foles as not as good as Mariano Rivera, but I see him as that type of person. He's not going to start the game, but he'll finish it. He's your good reliever.
He can come in
5 divisional round. I mean, number 2 seed. Yeah.
He can come in and finish it. But the other thing to this, when talking about what Nick Foles brings, it's similar to what Tyrod Taylor brings, maybe not on the same level with our team. When you understand the language of a playbook,
right?
When you understand the language of a playbook, you are in a position to be great in terms of helping your team win. Because the backup quarterback in many cases is a second voice of the head coach. And it's undervalued for the casuals to understand how important backup quarterbacks are.
Right.
But
Foles
Nick Foles
knows his role.
Absolutely, and he's humbled
and
he's happy with it.
Yep. Right.
But I do believe that this team is a serious player to win the conference. But this other team is going to have something to say about it.
Right.
We've got the Tennessee Titans. Last year's 1 seed. How you doing, Zappy? Last year's 1 seed, the Tennessee Titans. A disappointing end to a very good season. They lost their main man, King Henry, midway through the year, Derrick Henry, the undisputed king of running backs up until Jonathan Taylor said, hold on. I tend to think that Vrabel lost that game from a coaching standpoint against the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe that he outcoached himself. I'm not going to say that he was outcoached. I think he outcoached himself. When you sack a guy 8-9 times, as they did to Joe Burrow, and Ryan Tannehill, you got to win that game. And Ryan Tannehill also contributed in giving the game away. I'm not going to even point at King Henry. It was his first game back. He was just getting his legs back. It was unfortunate what happened to them last year. Now you enter Malik Willis, who is going to be gunning for Ryan Tannehill's starting quarterback position. And there was a little controversy going into the beginning of the season where Tannehill had basically said, similar to what Brett Favre pulled with Aaron Rodgers, and it's happened in other places too, Kurt Warner, Eli Manning, it's not my job to teach you. If you pick up something along the way, good for you. And I understand that because everybody has a job to do, and every quarterback, whether you're the backup or the starter, wants to be the man. Things kind of simmered down. They had a meeting, veteran to rookie. And I think Willis has a great attitude, and he himself said that Tannehill's a great guy, and he wants to learn from him, and he's going to learn from him whether Ryan wants to teach him or not. So I think that's a good answer. But I do think if this team should get off to a uncharacteristically slow start, I do tend to believe that Malik Willis will be starting football games probably in the last quarter of the season. I'm thinking more like around December, where they might sacrifice the playoffs for the bigger picture. The bigger picture would obviously be winning a division title in the future. But I think the bigger picture is let that kid get his stuff going, because Tannehill, I think they have decided, because they were very close a couple of times, Tannehill is not the answer. He's serviceable, but he's not the answer. That's where I'm at with this.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. He's going to have to – Tanny's going to have to win, because now you got Indianapolis on your heels. They're right there like, okay, we're coming. And he had a chance last year. He had the ball in his hand, final drive. He had a chance to put the game away, and he didn't do it.
He didn't get it done.
Right. And 2 years back-to-back, this team basically just imploded. So he's got to prove it. If not, I say if Indy jumps out there and Tennessee's like, let's say 7-5, and you got maybe the Raiders or whatever,
kind of in the middle. Kind of in the middle.
Yeah, I think they'll be like
playoffs now.
Yeah, they'll be like, you know what? We're not going any further with this guy. Let's see what we have on the bench. Yeah, he's on a short leash.
Definitely a short leash. I tend to agree. Zappy, I want to get you going on these topics. No surprise to you, we have the Jaguars and Texans both buried on the bottom of this particular division. Having said that, we do have both agree that the Jaguars are going to be a little better, a little more physical, just a little more in a position to surprise a few teams. Got the Texans in the basement. Zappy's gone.
Again.
But we also have Indy and Tennessee fighting for the divisional crown. Ultimately, I think how this plays out is Tennessee, probably similar to Indy last year, goes into week 18 with the season on the line, more than likely, whether it's the combination of Willis and Tannehill or whether it's Tannehill holding on to his job the whole year. This eerily reminds me kind of like what happened in San Fran with Jimmy G and Trey Lance.
Mm-hmm.
And also what happened in Miami with Fitzmagic and with the kid Tua. I tend to believe that Willis will be the guy before year's end, but it will cost them the playoffs because they're thinking about the future after Tannehill. Zap, what are your thoughts on this division in a few words? We kind of started this show last night. Weren't able to really get the juju going. What are your thoughts on the AFC South, Zap?
I mean, the AFC South is it's a two-horse race here, in my opinion. The Jaguars, the Texans, they're still rebuilding. The Jaguars did add some pieces on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. Mm-hmm. It'll make them a little more competitive, but it's not going to get them no more than 6 wins this year. As far as the Texans go, they came out, they drafted Derek Stingley, and then they drafted Kenyon Green, an interior offensive guard and a cornerback, 2 cornerstone pieces they could build that team around. We're still trying to figure out, is Davis Mills the guy? A lot of people who say that if Davis Mills would have waited 1 more year, he would have been the top quarterback taken in this year's draft. Mm-hmm. So
that's a good point, dude. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
So
I didn't either.
we'll see how he goes this time around. The Texans, they do still have Brandon Cooks, but for me personally, it's really hard for me to see them winning more than 3 games. And then now, which brings us to the Colts and the
That's
Titans.
Exactly where I had them. Me and you agreed on this.
Exactly where he had them too. I had 6 for Jacksonville, and y'all 2 got the
He picked 4 for Houston. I picked 3. Go ahead, Zach. Keep going.
Yeah. No,
You're rolling.
Houston 4, Jaguars 3. The Titans, there's a lot of question marks to the Titans. I did hear you mentioning how Vrabel outcoached himself. It's not the first time he's done it in the playoffs.
No, sir.
One of the big reasons why the Titans have failed in the playoffs has been because of Coach Vrabel. He's a great coach, don't get me wrong, He's a fantastic coach. He has that team disciplined. But when it comes down to the big time, the big games, for some reason, it's like he mind tricks himself.
It shrinks.
Yeah.
Exactly. And, and then not to mention, they trade A.J. Brown away, who is arguably a top 10 receiver in the league. And then they draft Treylon Burks. I mean, we're taking a rookie over a receiver going into his fourth year. Like,
they didn't trade A.J. Brown. They didn't trade him. They gave him away.
They gave him away. Well, no, the Cowboys gave away Amari Cooper. That was giving it away.
Well,
at least the Titans,
I didn't want to bring that up, though.
Yeah, no. Well, I'm saying, the Titans got a first-round pick out of it at least.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, the Titans are going to run with this. They're not going to leave the game in the hands of Ryan Tannehill. They're going to run the ball. It's going to be Derrick Henry all year, and that defense is still pretty good. But if they make it a habit of fall behind every game, 2 touchdowns, some of the games you'll be able to rush your way back in, but not all of them.
Right.
Ryan Tannehill, I'm expecting him to regress quite a bit this year. I think Willis will take over before the year is over because they need to know what they have in him. Quite frankly, this Titans team is built to make a run, but they just don't have the quarterback to complete it. And then, I think
Willis will get some time before the season. I think they'll give him some plays.
I think so too.
Really in there. Yeah,
and I can see them running a 2 quarterback system, similar to what the Raiders did with Derek Carr and Mariota.
Yeah,
so I could definitely see that
certain
happening.
Packages, Willis comes onto the field.
Absolutely, and I mean, but then that leads me to the Colts. I mean, the Colts really are just a team that needed one thing the last few years. They had Phillip Rivers, and what happened?
He did an admirable job, though, given his age.
Yeah, absolutely, he did.
They should have won the Buffalo game.
Well, they should have won week 7 or week 18 against the Jaguars. So that was the definition.
A year later, yeah.
So, but what I love about the Colts is the moves they made. They go out and they say, hey, we need a quarterback. Who's out there? Oh, let's go out and get a former MVP, a quarterback that has made it to the Super Bowl. And, quite frankly, Matt Ryan is still a very good quarterback, even with
top 12. Top 12.
Yeah, absolutely. So then you throw into the fact that they arguably now have the best running back in the league in Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, yeah.
They went out and I loved their draft picks, their first 3 draft picks, and Alec Pierce, Jelani Woods, and Bernard Raymond. Jelani Woods was one of the tight ends coming out this year that I thought was actually going to be probably the best tight end to come out. And Alec Pierce, he didn't get enough credit because he went to the University of Cincinnati. But the guy can play football. And I know this because he plays some ball. And I remember the game against Notre Dame. So it's he could ball.
I remember that game too. We talked that night. We were not pleased.
But, quite frankly, it's just this is without question the Colts division to lose. And the Colts can also be a team to watch out for, whereas they could very easily end up with the number 1 seed the way the Titans did last year because of their strength of their division.
That's a good point, too, because their division is kind of soft on the bottom.
It is.
And the AFC West is going to beat each other up.
Exactly. So for that,
Good point, Idris.
So I definitely see
really good point.
The Titans being in the thick of things. However, I think late season they're going to start to collapse and finish with 9 wins.
Yeah.
And then as far as the Colts,
that's what I see.
I see the Colts winning 11, possibly 12. I mean, you can't fault them. They're a good team. Matt Ryan's going to come out there. He's got weapons on the outside. That defense is going to ball. I mean, when you have Darius Leonard leading the way on the defense and his linebackers, and then you talk about DeForest Buckner on the defensive line, they have all the pieces there. So I honestly believe the Colts can make a run. They can make some noise. If they could protect Matt Ryan, they're going to continue to run the ball. Watch out.
Watch out.
So, yeah.
I agree. 100%. I say 9 wins for the Titans also.
Yeah, it's not to fault the Titans, but it's just the moves you make. I understand there was some issues with AJ Brown, but
he's still good.
You were the number 1 seed last year.
Right.
And you made moves that didn't make you better. They made you worse. So it was almost like, all right, well, Derrick Henry is now going into his 7th season.
That's a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles. So you bring in Willis, you bring in Treylon Burks. Maybe they're thinking about the future. And if they're out of it early, if they're starting out the season 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, 4-4, they've got to put Willis in.
It's Willis time.
Yeah.
If they're playing 500 ball approaching the midway point, or even the trade deadline for that matter, it's Willis time.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to, because you're not going to catch the Colts.
No,
you're not going to catch them. And and like I said, the AFC the West is deep. The North,
to your point, they might beat the crap out of each other.
And
the West is deep, and like the North is now deep.
Yeah.
So Tennessee might be the odd man out.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we only get one team out of the South this year.
Yeah,
it's hard to. I mean, I know we haven't covered the AFC West yet, but it's really hard to argue that they will not get 3 teams in there.
Right.
It's really, I mean, those are the simple facts.
Right. It's possible. It's really possible.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be interesting to see. Not so much this division in terms of that, barring a massive injury to somebody important on the Colts or a couple of important somebodies, but I think we all agree, and I'm going to repost that. They're winning the South, and they're a Super Bowl contender. I think we all agree on this.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And at least a 2 seed.
I picked them to be the 2. Zappy got them as possibly the 1.
I definitely say that they will be a 2, but it's trying to figure out who would be the other one in the AFC. And there's only one team I want to say, but I'm not going to say it right now because we haven't covered that division.
Yeah, so fair enough.
I will leave that to next time, and I'll piggyback to this episode. Fair
enough. That's how we do it around here. Anything in closing that you guys want to say? Do you have like a? I mentioned this to Idris before you came on, Zap. Mm-hmm. When we think about physicality in this league, we think about our division, the NFC East. We think about the AFC North, especially because of the highlighted newer rivalry with the Steelers and the Ravens. Mm-hmm. And this division right here is very low-key physical because this division right now, even with the bottom feeders like the Jags and the Texans, they're presenting what is the positive thing about both those teams, even though shit is going to take a minute. They got dual threats at running back. The former Colt man, Mack, along with Pierce. You got the dual threat in Jacksonville. We know what Taylor could do, but he also has the pass catcher behind him and Nyheim Hines. And in Tennessee, it's the Henry show. Right. But the point to be made is these guys all run the football. It's a very physical division.
It is, but that gets overlooked, in my opinion, because of the simple fact that division has only won 2 Super Bowls. And that is, and they were both by the Colts. So one of them was even before that division was created. So really, that division has won 1 Super Bowl, and that's the issue. It's good. You're great in regular season, but if you're not competing or finishing the job in the playoffs, then it was all for nothing.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
The last time Matt Ryan had 2 good receivers that can do the job, he went to the Super Bowl. Calvin Ridley and Julio.
Yeah, man.
And even before that, he had Julio and what's that kid's name? I can't remember his name now.
He had Mohamed Sanu as well.
Yeah, Sanu too. Yeah. I can't think of his name. I got his face in my head too.
Roddy White.
Roddy White.
Roddy White.
Yeah, Roddy White. And now he didn't have a real good run. He had a decent running back, but now he got a train.
Yeah,
He
he does.
is
I mean,
trained now.
and then you got to throw into the fact that Michael Pittman is going to have a big year this year.
Oh man, yeah,
I think he is on the verge of just exploding.
yeah.
It's really
Indy's
hard
going to be
find.
tough, man. Indy's going to be tough.
And the reason why is because they're going to run the ball. They're going to control the clock.
Yep.
And, I don't see them having to fight back in many games.
No.
If they're playing, if they're playing physical style football, running the ball, giving it to Taylor 25 to 30 times, it absolutely works. It absolutely works.
It might not be the same game it was in the 80s and 90s, but that formula still works. In closing, I just wanted to make a quick mention of this right here. This is my all-time quarterback team for the South. Kind of got to give pay a little homage to the past, but yeah, that's my quarterback class for the South. Peyton Manning, most league MVPs, should probably have a couple more Super Bowls were it not for Mike Jandervac getting in his head, and also some flimsy Colts defenses that were good on the back end but not always good on the front, or vice versa. Steve McNair, former league co-MVP with the great Brett Favre. Mark Brunell, Brett Favre's former backup. Not many people remember that Mark Brunell came up with the Green Bay Packers and was part of the expansion draft with the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2 years in the league, took him a game away from the bowl. A few years later, got him one game away from the bowl again. And everybody's talking about Deshaun Watson right now. And when we hit on the AFC North, we had a lot to unpack there. That is my all-time quarterbacks for the AFC South. Deshaun Watson did defeat Josh Allen. Just want to throw that out there. Up to now, that is his career highlight. Still a young man. We'll see where his career goes. Has some legality stuff to get. 6 games as of right now. We'll see where that goes. But until next time, thank you for watching. Football season is upon us. My favorite time of the year.
Let's go.
Great job, Jensen. I like how this guy just kind of came in at the end and really put the hammer down. And one thing that I love about Zappy, he really makes my life easier in the sense that he makes sure that he bridges the gap with the collegiate play into the pros. And it's great. But good job, gents, as always. And I look forward to the next show. And he is not frozen, I promise. Until next time, we are out.